if you stop getting curious and you stop learning about yourself at any point in time, then you're not really being honest about
Right.
how life kind of plays a role, and our relationships play a role in helping us really see ourselves clearly.
EQ gangsters, welcome to this episode. Super excited for you all to check out this awesome interview with Amy Fiedler. So some quick background on Amy. She is a certified trauma support specialist, holistic life coach, and Reiki master practitioner. Not sure if I'm saying that right. She's also an ordained minister, 3-time published author, specializes in providing folks with healthy emotional coping tools, supporting people in setting essential boundaries, and improving your ability to self-regulate and communicate with those in your life. She has a strong focus on emotional education, she's been applauded for facilitating total healing and long-term sustainable mental health with her clients. The bottom line is she is a bad to the bone life coach. Her Instagram, for those of y'all want to follow her, is at Amy the Life Coach. And that's AMY the Life Coach, at Amy the Life Coach. Or you can check her out on her website, amyfiedler.com. That's AMYFIEDLER.com. We have a great chat, great conversation. She shares some tremendous insights that I'm really excited for you all to check out. We hit how she became so self-aware. So if you all follow her on Instagram, you will just notice very, very quickly how self-aware she is. Her insights are very deep and just in some that are very profound, and others that are simple. And I told her, and you'll get a chance to hear, I'm like, man, some of your posts are like exactly what I feel, but I've never put words to before. So, she has a phenomenal way to communicate. She's real, which I totally dig. And she has a kind of a rough background, kind of a rough story, that led her ultimately to become self-aware in the area and space that she's currently in. So really hope you enjoy this. Also exciting, super exciting news, y'all. So the EQ Mafia, our membership, is opening very, very soon, maybe this week, and will be open for 1 or 2 weeks. So for you, friends, family members, coworkers, colleagues that are wanting to grow and take your emotional fitness program to the next level with a safe, supportive, encouraging, educational, informational community, check us out at eqgangster.com.
Noble,
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Awesome.
I like this whole setup behind
Oh, really?
you. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's so boom, we got the old EQ Gangster, and our membership is called EQ Mafia.
Love it.
So I
have my dead dog.
I love it.
How are
awesome.
you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so excited, Amy. You have no idea.
Oh, well, I'm excited to be here. You're so fun
goodness.
already.
So, man, I just, however Instagram does it right, I start seeing, because I, do a lot of the EQ stuff. And so, man, I start reading all your posts, and like every single post, I'm like, this is fire, right?
I love that.
You put words to, because I'm still very new in my journey for all intents and purposes. So I'm only 4 years into my emotional growth journey, emotional intelligence journey, and I've been emotionally clueless my whole life. And so, to
Love that.
the emotional clue bus drove by, and I just, kind of waved. And so to see your posts, I'm like, oh, like it's stuff that I have thought and felt, but I've never been able to put words to it before. You know what I mean? And so like every one of your posts is just, and I don't know how that works. Like, how is it that what you're saying, putting words to, is exactly what I have felt or have tried to express before, but have been unable to do it effectively.
Magic. It's magic.
That's right.
Which is funny because like I just tweeted yesterday, I was like, it's not the universe that's putting that post right in front of you. It's the fucking algorithm. Like, let's stop saying this is a sign.
Right.
But the truth is that like, I hear this a lot. People are like, how are you in my head? Are you over listening? And I'm like, I'm in your little, like, what is that little device in your house, like listening to everything. Alexa. I'm in your Alexa. Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know, but I do get that a lot. So I so appreciate that when people are like, you're putting words to my thoughts and my feelings. And I'm like, cool, because this is just all the shit going on in my head all day.
That's right. That's awesome. That's great. So, okay. So again, I'm super stoked to learn from you and get good skinny and stuff. And, kind of hear your journey and how you became this EQ emotional gangster. And because again, it's so funny, right? How God works, because like, I am the last guy that should be teaching anybody about emotions and feelings.
No, me too. I like,
seriously?
If you saw my upbringing and then like the way, like, first of all, the examples that I had in my life, and then the way I behaved at a young age, you would be like, how are you this now? Because back then, I mean, I was a people pleaser. I was super reactive. They called me Angry Amy because I just was like pissed off all the time. I didn't know how to communicate. I suppressed everything, which is shocking now because I don't shut up now, right? But like, that's the irony of it. I didn't have an example of boundaries. And I think this is what's so inspiring, because I tell people, my parents still don't have boundaries, and I can have a good relationship with them, even though they're like that, because I have boundaries.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's so money to hear, because I thought like you popped out of the womb as this like
dude,
this
no.
ninja, emotionally dialed in person, So it's super cool to hear, because literally until 4 years ago, people pleaser addict, emotionally needy, emotionally codependent. Let's see, what else? What is other my dysfunctions? Oh yeah, no, like you said, zero boundaries. But I didn't know who I was, because again, as a people pleaser addict my whole life, I had no idea who I was. I had no idea how exhausting people pleasing is. I had no idea until I started to learn. Like, it was just, it's been life changing for me, this whole journey. So I'd love to hear like what's your story? Tell us your story. And how did you go from your emotional dysfunction to to being the ninja Amy, the life coach now?
I haven't been called a ninja in a minute, so I love that. Well, the thing is that I think, and you can probably attest to this too, when you're in your like dysfunction, you don't know you're in your dysfunction. Like, it's just your norm. Right. And so I didn't have any self-awareness for a very long time, probably until like my teens, because I then developed severe anxiety, OCD, severe depression, and suicidal thinking. And it was at that point that I remember, and this is like my most vivid memory, I was laying in my bed in my parents' house, and I was just thinking like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And I called my mom into the room and tried to talk to her. And I said, I want to die. And she screamed in my face and said, I didn't raise you to talk that way. And that, like, I mean, we had a very, very tumultuous relationship, very chaotic, very abusive. But in that moment, it like, that's what was eye-opening to me. Like, wow, you've been this person the whole time. Like, anytime I needed support, you just yelled at me. And here I'm telling you, I want to kill myself, and you're yelling at me for that. And so I just looked at her and I said, can I talk to somebody else? Like, can I go to a therapist? Can I? And she looked at me and said, fine, in an angry tone, but don't tell your father, he'll think you're crazy. And I was like, well, that's some fuckery, but okay, right? That's some fuckery.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, I think, and I don't know the exact age, but I know I was like early teens at that point. And I went to, I don't know if it was a psychiatrist or what their proper title was, but I went there and they immediately were like, you have severe anxiety, you have depression, you have this. They gave me a bunch of meds. And then they handed me this notebook that they apparently hand to everybody. And they were like, read it and do the homework in there. And I was like, but what about me? Like, what, like, I'm not like the person that was in this office before me. I have my own issues and my own story. And so clearly that didn't really work. But one thing that this person had me do was take a journal and every half hour, write down what I was thinking. And when I brought it back like a week later, I had probably 6 or 7 pages full of thoughts, because this was every 30 minutes, like every single day.
Wow.
And I mean, first of all, what a nuisance, right? Like, do you imagine trying to go through your day?
No. That's brutal.
And I bring it back and he goes, you think too much. Well, no shit. You know, like, really?
You are joking me.
You think too much? He goes, the average person thinks 1 to 2 thoughts an hour. You are thinking like a whole page worth of thoughts. And I'm like, yes, I'm aware, but like, what's the problem? Why do I do this? And how do I solve it? And that was never answered. So kind of from that point forward, I'm like, I don't want to be on meds. This is not helping. I find myself just wanting to take more medicine because I'm doing the same things. I'm feeling the same way. And really the pill is supposed to stop it, but I have no coping skills with or without this pill.
That's right.
So, you know, and just a disclaimer here, because I try to do this very honestly, but medicine works for some people, right? And it gets some people to a balance. But for me, I wasn't getting the support I needed with the medicine or without the medicine. So for me, I just went in a different direction and started kind of exploring myself in a spiritual way. Started going to church, found a psychic. I went all over the place.
Yeah.
And it was that point on that I started to pay attention to what I was contributing in my relationships, what I was bringing in these conversations. Like, how was I participating in this type of abuse or unhealthy situation? It wasn't always, oh, woe is me, I'm this victim because I have these parents who don't know how to function right. There's something that I'm doing here, whether it's me allowing it or me participating in it. And so from there, I just started to kind of dig in more and try to get curious about my thoughts and my feelings. Then I started, you know, getting educated on it. And then here we are, you know, I'm jumping years and years and years, but it started in my teens, and it's a process, man. Like it's a layered process, like still to this day. And I'm going to be 37 next week, like 1 week from today. And I'm still sitting here like, Jesus, like this still bothers me.
Right.
And I still can't fucking figure this shit out. Right. Like I've been like in this for like over a decade at this point, and I'm still like that. So, you know, I always say to everybody, like it is our own kind of timeline here. And it's like an onion. You're going to peel back layers and figure more out about yourself until you're dead. Because for fuck's sake, if you stop getting curious and you stop learning about yourself at any point in time, then, you know, you're not really being honest about how life kind of plays a role, and our relationships play a role in helping us really see ourselves clearly.
Yeah, that's right, man. Love that. Love that. One of the things that, so so when I tell you I was emotionally clueless, like I'm not exaggerating. So went to counseling. I yelled at my wife 3 times in 3 weeks, and she said 3 things. Don't ever do that again. You've never done that before. You've got more issues than Time Magazine. Right. And so, right. And so we went to counseling, and this counselor introduced me to 2 revolutionary new concepts called feelings and emotions. And so he was like 66 years old at the time. This is 4 years ago, 66 years old. He had 25,000 hours of counseling people. This guy is freaking Yoda of like counseling people, right? Of feelings and emotions. And he said, Noble, I still do 3 to 5 emotional exercises a day to work on my own shit. Like, and I was like, you telling me you're still working through stuff? He said, bro, like emotional injuries don't stop at your childhood, right? We're dealing with that kind of thing every day. And so to your point, like it was just, he recalibrated my expectation. Cause I was thinking, okay, so I'm going to have emotional intelligence in like 2 weeks, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I'm going to graduate, right?
That's right. Like I'll be healed in 90 days? Is that, you know? And so he's like, no, McFly, like, dude, this is like you said, right? This is a process, bro. And so, and so it was, and honestly, it's encouraging for me to hear even you, who obviously in this world, I completely look up to, and just how self-aware and how, just the connections and the epiphanies, and like, wow, this is incredible that, okay, so you're 10 years into your journey and you're still working on stuff, right? That's encouraging for me to hear, who's, a lot more novice, I feel like. And it's layers too. I feel like it's layers. Okay. Yeah. So how something that is, okay, I got so many questions for you. Oh my gosh. I feel like
hit me with them. I'm ready.
It's like a kid in a candy shop here, man.
I love this. This is already my most fun interview I've ever done in my life. All right.
No,
yes. Yeah.
I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. That's great. You just kind of went through that little piece of your story that, oh yeah, so I started this whole spiritual journey, and then boom, I started to kind of become aware of stuff. Can you do a little bit deeper dive? Like, how on earth have you become so crazy self-aware as you are right now?
I wish I knew. I really do. No, honestly, I do. And people can attest to this when they have a session with me, because I'll start talking and I don't think it's me. I don't feel like I'm in my body sometimes. It's just like this. It just comes out of my mouth. And there are times where I then hear it and I go, oh, that was so good. And the client is literally dying, laughing. And they're like, oh my God, you impress yourself. And I'm like, I do sometimes. But I feel like from a very young age, and I can say this because I have a friend who has 3 small children. Do you have children?
Yeah, we've got a 14-year-old daughter.
Okay. 14, not easy.
Right. That's right. That's right. But I tell you though, it's just, not to interrupt, it's been great because we're teaching these emotional tools.
Yes.
Right. Which has been life-changing.
Yes.
For her and huge. For us. You know what I mean?
I applaud you guys as parents because and that's the thing, a lot of the people that come to me are parents, and then sometimes their kids are young and their kids want to talk to me. And I'm like, this is so great because I didn't have that when I needed it. So, right. I mean, honestly, I applaud you guys for taking this and not being selfish, obviously, right. Letting it ripple out to your kid's life, because it's going to make a huge impact on the trajectory of your kid's life.
How did you get that self-awareness?
Oh, I was going to say, so when you're a kid, I feel like it kind of shapes this experience. I was the middle of 3 kids. And I often, when the 3 of us, and still to this day, when the 3 of us are together, I often feel like I'm in my own world and I don't fit in with them. I get along great with them each separately, but the three of us combined, I just kind of feel left out. And I, to speak to the middle child syndrome type of dynamic, like you often do feel a little abandoned or forgotten. Everybody remembers the first, everyone remembers the last. And then my name was always forgotten. I was like mistaken for my sister's name. My dad would get mad and call me my mother's name. And I was like, I guess no one's really mad at me because nobody can remember Amy. But, you know, when you're alone a lot and you spend a lot of time just like being with yourself and playing by yourself and talking to yourself, like when you don't have an outlet for that connection or support or validation, you tend to learn to develop this relationship with yourself that you really need from those adults or your friends, you know, the people that are the same age as you. And I wasn't really getting that. And so I really think, and I haven't thought about it much, but I've thought about it enough to think that that had to have been the start of my own kind of self-curiosity and really just developing this inner dialogue where I question things. And I was always the kid who was asking why. Like my parents were very strict and it was very much like, do what we say, not what we do. And I'd go, but why? And they were like, God, you're so annoying. Like, stop asking us questions. And I was like, I think it's a logical question. Like, why do I have to take my shoes off before walking in the house? And like, why do you want my elbows off the table? Like nobody was giving me an understanding of what they were telling me. They were just dictating. I think that just stuck with me for a very long time. So when I started to actually dive into the knowledge and get like professional support and education in the way that I needed it, I already had this mechanism inside of me that was like really, really curious about myself and the world at large. And I think that really plays a huge role in the amount of wisdom I've obtained and I continue to obtain as I grow, because I'm always just kind of curious, like, why am I anxious right now? Or why did I think that thought? Or why is this happening? Or why are they behaving that way? It's a lot of questions that always lead me to an answer.
Sure. Love it. Okay. So that is fire. Fire. Okay. So that's super fascinating how that played out in your life and, you know, that dynamic of you being alone. And so you kind of, you know, you had a lot of time to think and to process, or not necessarily to process, but just to be curious and that kind of thing. Yeah. I was kind of, and I don't know if it was my particular family or my generation or what the dynamic was, but my dad, I learned from my dad and my mom, intellectual curiosity. Like my dad was a brilliant guy, genius guy, ER doctor, you know, memorized books of the New Testament, you know, just huge brain, taught himself piano, taught himself classical guitar, all these different things. And so I got to see intellectual curiosity modeled, but anything directed at me was, at least the stories that I created in my own being, was I felt very selfish and guilty and egomaniac if I turned any of that curiosity inward. Like, well, why do I behave this way? Or why am I, you know, well, I didn't even know the vocabulary to know anything about emotions or feelings. So I wasn't even able to do that. But why am I acting this way? Why did I respond that way? Any type of questions about me, I would immediately shut those down because, oh, I'm being selfish. I can't be selfish. How does one develop self-awareness that maybe does not have that internal mechanism that you did and that kind of dynamic of you spending that time by yourself? So for the rest of us, like, how do we develop that self-awareness?
Well, you got to get curious, but first you got to get comfortable. So when you say, hey, like it was not comfortable for me to self-reflect because for me, I have a belief that it's selfish. We go from there. That's the starting point. Okay. So who taught you or who showed you or who said to you, it's selfish to get curious about why you're doing something. And maybe it wasn't even in that context. Maybe you witnessed dad being really smart, but you never saw dad, let's say hypothetically, hold himself accountable. And if you didn't have an example,
You're doing brain surgery, girl.
Oh, no.
Snap.
If
Snap.
you don't have an example of accountability, personal accountability, then of course you're not going to learn that. That's not going to be in your awareness. You're going to probably think it's bad. And maybe hypothetically, the example was him putting it on you as the kid or blaming, like my parents, it was always everybody else. There was no personal accountability. It was the government. It was God. It was their parents or whatever. There's a distinction between me going, my parents shaped my behavior through their example, but I take ownership of how I behave now.
Right.
They didn't show me that example. I was just an isolated, neglected child, and I was, special, I guess. But if we don't have dad setting this example, let's say, of saying to you as his son, hey, like, sometimes you're going to make a mistake. Sometimes you're going to have a misstep. Sometimes, and then not just say it, but show you it. Because if there's a disconnect in what they're doing and what they're saying, you're going to pick up one or the other. Are you taking notes?
Are you kidding me? Absolutely. I've been taking notes this whole time.
Dying.
Did I not tell you that this podcast interview was down low therapy session?
I don't mind. This is fun.
No, I am a crazy learner. Like this is, and so I am, it's a blessing. And this is honestly one of the selfish reasons of why I love podcasting is because I get to talk to, experts and I get to learn, and then of course I get to share all the great skinny.
No, dude, I love it. Take all the notes in the world. I was just dying because you were really discreet before if you were taking them. And I was like, wait a minute. He is frozen looking at something right now.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, like, so many questions, Amy. Oh my gosh. I'm teaching and sharing all the lessons that I have learned in my own journey. For me, it's got to be practical because, so as a new guy starting this journey, looking at the Mount Everest of emotions and feelings and literally being clueless about this world, it was very scary. You were talking about my discomfort level, like, man, it's very uncomfortable. And I think a lot of guys, and maybe some women too, who and this is one of the things I say a lot of the time is like, how many of us have been trained in this stuff? Nobody has that I know of, right? Nobody's been trained in this stuff, but we all have feelings and emotions that impact every decision that we make. And yet none of us are trained in it. And we wonder why there's so much dysfunction out there. So these epiphanies, and I want to do all these different rabbit holes with you. I also want to capture like the practical skinny, like, how do you find a good coach, a good therapist? How do you, if we all don't have access to Amy, the life coach, how do we find somebody like, your first experience with that crazy therapist? Well, you think too much. Like, dude, who on earth would ever say that to somebody? Right? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I know. And honestly, I love that you're asking this question because this is such an important question and a topic that I'm super passionate about because of my experiences. Here's the easy answer for you. Educate yourself, right? So understand what is healthy. It's like, go to my Instagram page, understand what is healthy and what is not. And then when you go and you search out that therapist or that professional, pay attention to how they speak and how they behave. That's it. We pay attention to the wrong shit. We sit down in an interview and we go, oh my God, like I built you up on a pedestal because of all of your schooling and your qualifications. And now I've made myself so small and I can't see you clearly. And now I'm trying to prove myself to you and show you all my accomplishments. When like the easy route, not just in this setting, but like with people who are like looking for a relationship or dating, like the easy route here is pay attention to if their communication is healthy or not. Pay attention to how they behave. So for instance, like a lot of therapists, regular, like conventional therapists will offer some sort of consultation. The majority of them would. So, you know, when you get on the phone or you get in person with them, listen to them. Do they always hold themselves accountable if you point out something they've done that is harmful or hurtful or confusing? Or do they blame it on you, right? Do they gaslight you? Do they sit there and go, no, you're the one with anxiety. This is why you're hearing it that way. Or do they go, I did not intend for you to receive that information that way. Let me change how I'm communicating it, right? What is there, and this is tricky, but a little easier nowadays with social media, because a lot of, I don't know if you know this, but like conventional therapists are not trained to share personal stuff about themselves. Life coaches can do whatever the fuck we want because we're not regulated.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is good but bad because we're not regulated and therapists are. So needless to say, if you find a therapist online, you're probably going to find somebody who's not sharing too many photos of themselves or too much personal stories and things like that. And therefore, it's a little challenging because you're basing your decision off of, do I resonate with the way they talk in their work? Do I resonate with those things? And is it what I'm needing or wanting? Versus like a life coach, someone like me or whatever, you get a little more of a personal feel for who they are and how they behave and what maybe they've gone through and what they're continuing to go through. And you resonate on that level. Either way, if it's posted, you can read how they communicate. And then if you hear their voice, you can hear how they communicate. Like, are they aggressive? Are they demeaning? Are they invalidating? Like, these are game changers. Had I been equipped at that time and spoken or just had one session, like I didn't end after one session with that particular therapist. I went for a period of time. Then I switched to somebody else, but I didn't have any of this knowledge. So I was just sitting down with professionals and taking every word they said as truth about me.
Wow.
You know, so I think it's important that even when we can acknowledge, I probably need some level of professional support, or I might need to go and get on some medicine or whatever the case may be for you. I think it's important to know what your boundaries are first in terms of how do I like to be treated and how do I like to be spoken to.
Wow. Ah,
right?
This is so amazing.
Well, I think it's helpful too. Like you work with like corporate. This is, I don't work with corporate. I work with individuals, but I work with individuals who work in corporate America, right? Like I have clients that work at Goldman Sachs and things like that. And they'll often ask me questions about like, how do I talk to my supervisor about this? Or how do I set a boundary here? I go, they're just people.
Right.
We make this different because we label things and we put them in these boxes, and then we change the meaning of how we're supposed to behave based on the box it's in. Like, oh my God, well, it's the CEO, so I can't communicate authentically with the CEO. Yes, you fucking can.
Right.
Yes, you fucking can.
Right.
And if you don't, if it's a boundary for you to be able to communicate honestly with everybody in your life, that should stay consistent in the work you do.
Love it. Okay. So fire, dropping bombs. Okay. Dig it like a shovel. All right. Yeah. So I'm tracking like a muddy cat through a house right now. Love it. Okay. And I love how you made that distinction between life coach versus therapist, because I'm definitely more on the life coach side. So I guess more accurately, I do what you said you do. So I coach individuals who are in corporate America. So yeah, I guess that would be probably more accurate description. And I love, and I didn't know this stuff about what you're saying there, because I am definitely the personal guy, right? I mean, you know, I call myself the dirty underwear style of leader, right? I share the junk in my trunk. Hey, look, I am definitely not not coaching you from a place of I've arrived, right? I am like, I am still absolutely on my emotional growth journey as well. And so, which for me helps set an environment, creates an environment where it makes them, off the jump, be vulnerable also, because they're,
Same. Yeah, because
right?
you relate. It's like if you walk into a room full of strangers and none of them share personal information about themselves, it's pretty intimidating.
Right. Sure.
When you try to connect or relate, right? Relationships, we relate. So if we're relating to someone, you got to find a commonality. And if that commonality happens to be, yo, I grew up with abusive parents too, that's not a trauma bond. That's a, hey, I feel like I can trust you because you've been there too, so you'll get me.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. 100%. Oh, the other thing that I love what you said was, how do you know what therapist, coach is going to be good for you? And it's now, okay, here's a little bit of pushback.
Yeah.
Only from this perspective, not because I don't agree with you. Everything you said is fire. So because I'm applying everything to me, because I am, again, I was that emotionally clueless guy 4 years ago, and so I'm working with a lot of nobles right now that have been emotionally clueless their whole lives as well. And for me, one thing I didn't tell you, I was in a cult for 20 years. 20 plus years.
We might have to have another podcast episode because now you're hitting like the job that I wish I had, was just like the private investigator. Like I love digging into that shit.
Oh, Amy, I'm telling you, I think we're going to be homies, girl. I think
we are. No, I think we already are. No, that's done. That already happened. If you didn't want to, too fucking bad. Here we are.
I love it. So, but here's the thing, right? So being in a cult for 20 years, but here's the deal, right? And we spent the last 3 years detoxing. I mean, it has literally been 3 years of detoxing from that environment. And here's what's crazy, right? Because the laundry list of questions has been like, how on earth, I'm a fairly smart guy, right? Fairly smart guy. How on earth did I end up in, stay in, and become one of the poster children for this cult? Like, how on earth could I have allowed that and done that and all that kind of stuff? Well, the circumstances were set beautifully. The stage was set beautifully. So again, emotionally needy, emotionally codependent, totally insecure, self-sabotage, self-condemnation, self-hatred, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then I found this group of people that, and then again, people pleaser addict. So total performance-based relationships, right? And 100% gaslighting environment. So got gaslit for 20 some years. But again, because I had no awareness, no self-awareness, no social awareness, and I wouldn't have known a boundary if it hit me in the face, right?
Right.
So they're all up in our business, right? I want to know about your marriage. I want to know about your faith. I want to know about your finances. I want to know about your parenting. They literally wanted to know every single aspect of your life, right? So intense control, manipulation, guilt, fear, shame, condemnation, all the unhealthy, toxic stuff. But again, I never realized it because I wasn't aware. I'm like, oh, okay. And the other crazy thing was, I did well. I performed because performance-based relationship. I'm a doer. I'm a performer. I'm a high achiever, right? So and this is the other thing is I tell a lot of folks I'm coaching, look, you can be successful in life for unhealthy reasons.
Yeah. Yo, that right there.
You know
that. A lot of people don't realize that though.
That's right. That's exactly right. 100%. So the only thing I was saying is like, okay, if you had told me that you just got to telling me that, in that whole thing, well, no, but just be aware of how they're treating you, how they're responding to you.
Right. You didn't have an awareness.
I would have said.
Neither did I. So really the answer to this question, I already know you're going to ask me,
right,
is like, we have to be better parents. Like we have to provide this education from a young age. Like there's no way to go back and rectify that. And we all we can do now, right? Like when we've been through it and we learn it, is like spread that information out as far as it can reach to hopefully hit those age groups that are older that might still be trapped in those cycles. Like a lot of my clients have gone through so many fucking coaches and therapists, spend thousands of dollars, and they sit in front of me and they go, I don't get it. One session with you has brought me so much change and clarity, but like I spent years spending money on these people and it didn't do any good. And I think the thing is like, there's no way to change that other than to provide this type of information to individuals at a young age and educate parents so they can educate their kids. Like that, I feel like is the fix to that problem, because there's no way, if you, same with me as you, like if you had said to me, and I had been in fucked up situations as well, where like I leaned into what felt like home, but a more improved version of home, and home was dysfunctional. Right. So I leaned into more dysfunction. It seemed like an upgraded version. So it was kind of like, oh, well, they're a little more supportive than my parents are. And I went there, and then it was just as bad, if not worse, quite frankly. But at that age, at that time, in my mind, I was like, no, this is so much better than home. Nobody could tell me different. I had people trying to tell me different at the time. Nobody could tell me otherwise, because I'm like, you don't know what I've been through and you don't know what you're talking about. Had I had parents who were not controlling, who were not, emotionally immature, who were not, I don't know, abusive in many, many emotional, mental, physical sorts of ways, I might have had a half a chance of not being involved in shit like that. Got it.
That's great. Because, one of the other things that you said to tie back, one of the earlier comments that you made, is so powerful and is bounced around in the nugget is, we attach meaning to stuff. And a lot of times what I'm discovering slowly is that a lot of times that meaning is not an accurate attachment of the story, right? Of the meaning. Another in this cult that we were a part of for 20 years. I was
20 years. No.
Oh yeah. 20 years.
Your wife, you, and your child.
Yes. Well, me and my wife primarily.
Okay.
And we were baptized in narcissism, right? Like we were, and I had no idea. I didn't know what it was, right? And again, we were in this incredibly narcissistic organization, and then got really up close and personal with a hardcore narcissist, and again, had no idea what it was. And what I would do as the people pleaser addict, the emotionally needy, and all my friends. So I was the leader of this organization, one of the leaders of this organization, and all these people would come to me like, hey man, this guy is treating us all like crap. Well, I would gaslight them, right? I would like, no, you don't understand. Like he means well. He's just a,
you defend the abuser.
I would defend the abuser, right? 100%.
Yeah.
And now looking back, of course, it's soul crushing, right?
But it's not your fault. Like, here's the thing, Noble, is like, we all defend our abusers when we don't know any better at that time. And when we are defending them, we are actually convinced that they are right. And so are we. And so we think we're being loyal, and we think we're being supportive, and we think that, we're communicating honestly, and we are. We're communicating as honestly as we can with where we're currently at. So you were abused. So any abuse that rippled out from you was thanks to that abuser abusing you and manipulating you and doing all of those things that had you not in your right state, living by their standards.
Yes.
100%. It's just the ripple effect. That's where I always say to people, like, it's the same when we talk about our parents, right? Like, I go, you know what? Like, my parents are good people. I love my parents. I don't love my parents' behavior. I don't love my parents' communication. And it's clear to me as I've gotten older and I've worked through a lot of the trauma and the pain that I felt growing up. I look at them and I empathize and I have compassion, and then I protect myself with the boundaries. But me having empathy and compassion doesn't mean I'm saying their behavior is okay. You know, I can look at people that hurt people. And this is why I get a lot of backlash sometimes online. Cause like I could look at the person that was abusing you and go, they were probably heavily abused and they were just as stuck as you were, if not more. But that doesn't mean I'm saying his behavior, her behavior was okay.
Right.
It's just, I can see beyond it and go, ooh, they're fucked up and they're really hurt and they're stuck in that fuckery.
Right. 100%. That has definitely been part of this 3-year detox journey for sure, is again, in attempts to try to create meaning and understanding around what happened and why it happened is, well, they are just versions of Noble in some form or fashion in their own dysfunction. They just have not come to the self-awareness yet, or the realization yet that, oh, wow. Right. Because the story, and again, being a part of that for 20 years myself, anytime someone would leave, they trained us and programmed us with the story and the meaning that we were supposed to have. Oh, well, they just lost their dream, or they became jaded, or they got negative and they didn't see the bigger picture, or they weren't strong enough, right? All the stories that we were trained to have. And then being that person now that leaves the, I don't know if you ever saw that movie, The Village. I
haven't, but I watched a lot of Scientology shit. So.
Oh, okay. So the Village is fascinating study in psychology and all kinds of it's fascinating. And when I left the commune, the village, if you will, now I know the stories that they have told and are telling themselves about us. What makes us kind of different is that, we were very, very influential in this cult. And it was not like some new person in the cult that was not doing a big, we were some of the main spokesmen. And so, and thankfully for some of them, it caused them to be like, man, if Noble is bouncing, there has to be some deeper reason then, because we were, 24 years, again, we were in the top 0.01% of the organization. And as people, and again, like you said, I love what you said too, like we are trying to tell people this message and story of emotional healing, because that's what started to open our eyes. Like as we started to grow emotional awareness, and then we came back to the different functions, different business events that were going on, we're like, wow, that hits differently now than it did. Right. And we're like, what? And so then we brought it up to the chain of command, and they're like, oh, no, but you're crazy, bro. This is just you. And we're like, I don't think so, man. Right. And so anyway, whole nother story, whole nother conversation, maybe for another time. But I love what you said. I guess the hope for me is I just need to continue to be an emotional health evangelist to try to reach as many people as possible, to get them out of these situations and, relationships that we all, kind of find ourselves in. I don't have time for another one. I want to be respectful of your time. And
no, hit me with another. I got time.
Okay. I'll do one more. What has been the most challenging aspect of your emotional health and growth journey?
I don't know if there's one, quite frankly. Like, I honestly think it's like, there's a season for different ones, like right now, we're going to have a real transparent conversation. I, in years past, have only had abusive, like romantic relationships. This now is the first time in my life that I've had a real healthy romantic partnership.
Wow.
And And for the amount of work that I have done on myself up until this point, yeah, I still ended up in pretty abusive situations. But being here now and having like an incredibly healthy, supportive partner who can see through my own bullshit and communicate to me in a way that I've never received other than like the professional support I ended up having that worked. Like I've never received this type of love and support from anyone in my life. That's so triggering. It's so like my season right now, and like people don't always see this because you see bits and pieces of like if I flash him picture of him or something, but I don't disclose all of that. But the reality is that like there's like little things that come up in a relationship that, you know, you can only go so far working through when you're alone. And like, I worked tirelessly on myself. Like nobody can ever look at me and go, she didn't do the work. She didn't do the work. Cause like head in journal, going to get my form of support religiously, I've grown a significant amount. But then I get in front of someone who had a healthy upbringing and doesn't have the type of parental relationships I have and doesn't have a history of abusive relationships. And I look at him and I'm like, oh, I have so much more work to do. So much more work to do. Right. And it's just like, so like the most challenging thing for me right now is like that stuff, like me realizing as much as I've tried to not be like my mother, there's still shit I do that is like my mother and I am not proud of. And to feel ashamed sometimes or embarrassed when I catch myself behaving in those ways, that's hard for me to digest, to catch myself in a moment where, you know, he points something out to me or he's bothered by something and I see how I cope with that. I behave just like her. I push and pull and I go, okay, well, just, you know, just leave then. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm her. I don't mean that. That's not what I mean. Right. And that's why it's so layered. Like I could only get so far growing in that aspect of my life with the people that I was with up until this point. And now I'm with somebody who is incredible and allows me a space to see myself without abusing it, without, you know, and obviously vice versa, because he'll look at me and go, I've never met somebody so emotionally intelligent in my life. And I know that you've been through some shit and still have a lot to work through, but I've never met anyone so willing to do the work and grow. And you do it like this, Amy. And I'm like, yes, I do, because you didn't see where I started. You saw where I started and you see where I'm at. You see why I put my head down and I just go. So yeah. So I think that would be the most honest way to answer that question is like, that's what's most challenging right now is seeing that it doesn't matter that I've been in this for over 10 years, really working on myself. And the reason I remember first going to get help wasn't just like anxiety and family stuff. It was like, I wanted a boyfriend and I was like a teenager. I wanted love. I didn't feel love at home. And so to like, look back now, like, oh, I was like 14, 15 years old. And this was the area of life that like bothered me the most. And now I've gotten what I've wanted, but I've still got to work through stuff is really mind blowing to me. Like, you know?
Right. That's right. So first of all, thank you for your vulnerability and, you know, and your transparency and for sharing, you know, a current real, you know, area that, you know, that you're working through. And I appreciate again, your vulnerability and you sharing that, especially again, a real time, like in the moment thing. So I don't take that lightly. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. No, I appreciate you providing a space to feel comfortable to do that.
Yes, absolutely. So how do we follow you? How do we find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
So I'm probably the most active, as you know, on Instagram. So everyone can follow me at Amy the Life Coach on Instagram. But I hang out on Twitter sometimes or TikTok, and I'm at Amy the Life Coach on both those platforms as well, or they can go right to my website, which is amyfiedler.com.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much for your wisdom, your insights, your vulnerability. If I can ask you, okay, this is good. It'll be a fun question for me. How do you feel? What emotion or emotions are you feeling right now?
Excited. Like, this is like invigorating to me, this conversation, but also just like, and I have to just give credit where credit's due. I do tons of interviews, like podcast interviews. And like, you have a really incredible energy and presence. Like, you bring personality. You're so yourself in this setting. And I really value and respect that in people, because I really try to keep it real on my end. And I always get complimented for it. People are like, I love how down to earth you are. I love how you just are so direct and you just speak like the way you are. I'm like, yeah, if you came and hung out with me, I'm the same person there than I am on Instagram. So I respect it, because, you know, from one to the other, like I see that in other people too. And it's really refreshing, but also just really empowering and motivating to talk to somebody like you, and who gets really excited about this nerdy shit in our brains, you know?
That's right.
You know, because like,
Yes.
it's not a conversation that a lot of people are equipped to have. And I mean, I can't call it, a lot of my friends love this stuff as well, but there's very few people you can sit down and just like dig and dig and dig and dig, and who gets like a high. Like, I get a high off of like getting a little bit deeper and a little bit more curious. And so I appreciate that. I really do. So yeah, I mean, excited, happy, empowered, inspired. It's good. This was a good way to end my Friday. It really was.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited.
I love our conversation, and I was so happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Amy. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend.
Oh, you as well. Okay.